East African region with the countries that continue to face all these challenges. Now, we'll be transitioning to a conversation about the state of the economy because the numbers are telling us different things. When you speak to real people, they tell you different stories. But first, we begin with the story that over the last 15 months, the Kenyan currency has remained stable against major global currencies, but notably so against the US dollar. The currency trading at an average of 128 shillings to 131 shillings to the dollar. It is this stability that experts now say has been manipulated. They say it is unusual for the currencies to remain at the same level for a protracted period of time, as Jimmy Mbogo sought out.
In the first quarter of 2024, the Kenya shilling took its worst hit, significantly depreciating against the US dollar to trade at over 160 shillings to the dollar in January of 2024. This was before gaining against the greenback a month later to trade at 144 shillings to the dollar by mid-February, and later down to 127 shillings in April, where the currency has since been trading at an average of 128 to 131 shillings to the dollar to date, marking over 1 year of Kenyan currency stability. But it is this stability that is now being questioned by the International Monetary Fund.
For example, they were in town 2 weeks ago. One of the things they told us is that the exchange rate is too stable. Yes. One of the things the IMF told us when they were in town 2 weeks ago is that the exchange rate is too, that they think it is interfering with the transmission and that it is interfering with inflation targeting.
The government now seeking to distance itself from the insinuation of currency manipulation, with the president's chief economic advisor David Ndii now saying they have taken a pragmatic approach.
So a lot of these debate and the IMF asking whether it is moved too stable, too unstable, is basically witchcraft. This is just witchcraft we economists do, which can go this way, can go this way, but the policymaker has to be pragmatic.
But Kwame Owino from the Institute of Economic Affairs disagrees.
So that leads me to the thinking that whatever it is that is happening with the Kenya shilling is something we need to observe and study very, very clearly. Because whichever witch doctor that is, he's very effective for now.
According to Chachi Logutu, an economist from IC Group, the numerous reasons given to support the stability of the shilling, such as portfolio inflow from infrastructure bonds, tapping into the international Eurobond, and increased diaspora remittance, still do not explain the protracted stability of the currency.
So if you look at it all, it just points to the stability being pointing to mandate of the shilling, at least to ensure that it's within the current levels. And why do I think it's been managed? The restoration of the FX interbank markets, and the impact of all this is at least to ensure that our external debt services is certain.
Churchill warns that although in the short term the move may reduce imported inflation by managing imports, it may not hold in the long run. Jimmy Mbogo, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
All right, and just before we take a break, I just want to hear from you, Alex, on this one. Your thoughts about the stability, because the chairperson of the Kenya Revenue Authority, Derito Murithi, is saying that the IMF is complaining that it is too stable. What do you think?
It's very interesting. Because we've also been asking ourselves the same questions.
Yeah.
When you look at a country where even our own budget is running into a fiscal deficit of in excess of 923 billion, actually it's heading towards $1 trillion, looking at the budget review and outlook paper. And you look at now the chairman of KRA, who is supposed to be collecting our revenues, and we are seeing whenever we do our budget projections, our revenue is somewhere around 15% of GDP, with an expenditure of between 22 to 23% of GDP, and then you have a currency that has remained stable for 15 months, while you look at the euro and other currencies, there are some fluctuations. Yeah. It tells you there could be some operations that are happening, even though we've also seen that our reserves have also been increasing. Yeah. It leaves somebody wondering, why is it that the Kenyan shilling seems to be stable, but when we talk to the Kenyans, kwa ground, as they say, we are not feeling it. Yeah. It leaves you wondering whether our monetary policy is being managed to ensure that we talk about the dollar. And if you listen even to those of in the political class and managing our economy, whenever they want to tell you that we are doing well, they will just point to the dollar has been stable for this period. They don't go beyond that. Yeah. So it tells you maybe we are mentioning what we are managing in a way, and those in the business sector who are dealing with other currencies will tell you there are fluctuations when you look at the euro and others. But the dollar for 15 months has remained quite stable, and our debt servicing is quite high. Most of it was dollar denominated, but now we are moving into, you saw the operation that happened with the Chinese loan now, where we are changing it from dollar denomination to yuan and so on. So it tells you there could be some management that is happening with the dollar that we are not being told. Yeah.
And Churchill, in that report by Jimmy Mbogo, you also allude to the possibility of management. How is it done?
How is it done?
Yeah.
And I think it happens within the context of the foreign exchange interbank markets, because this is the market whereby foreign exchange happens. So we've seen that post-2023, there was the restoration of the foreign exchange interbank market. It wasn't there before. And coincidentally, during that period, we saw also the government-to-government oil importation deal, which now reduced the demand for foreign exchange that was there. And now this whole arrangement that we have, where now the oil market companies are now buying oil in shillings and then paying in dollars after 6 months. Yeah. So that demand that was there has been reduced. So the operations within the foreign exchange interbank market, I think that is where all these things come to play, because you find that all the banks are put together, the central bank is also there. So at any given day, they can see the supply and demand, and now they put whatever the pricing of the dollar shilling rate that it is, to what Alex has also alluded to, seeing even other currencies, that if you look at the shilling to the euro, the shilling to the British pound, there's some moves. But to notice that if you look at the shilling to other currencies which are not the dollar, it's basically the dollar and, say, the British pound. Those ones we've seen some moves. So it's basically the shilling, the dollar and British pound. And then because the dollar is the middle currency there, so before you convert your money from shillings to British pound, for instance, you have to convert it to dollar, and then from dollar to the pound, yeah. So we've been seeing moves between the euro and the dollar, or the British pound with the dollar. But yet we are, on this side, we are just saying that there's some staticness in terms of the shilling and the dollar. So that has been quite baffling. But it speaks also to, because the dollar is now the reserve currency, it's more convertible. So most of the action that we are seeing within the foreign exchange interbank market alludes to some managing, because we've seen some moves. We've seen, yes, there's been some positives. Saying the foreign exchange reserves has been built up quite significantly over the last 18 months or so. We've seen even the improvement in the current account balance. But notwithstanding that, where the action is this market. And there's a word that Dr. Ndi alluded to, which you've also played, pragmatism. And it's coming from the fact that if you look at February, March last year, when the shilling was around 160 levels to the dollar, and the pragmatism came in, rather than letting the shilling slide to, say, 200, hypothetically, the pragmatism came, and now they stabilized it, at least the appreciation. And now the pragmatism is whereby they do not want to let the shilling to slide further, in the sense that we've seen the dollar against other currencies. The dollar has been weakening. So ordinarily, you would expect that the converse of that the shilling should be strengthening, but that is not the case. So that is where the pragmatism is coming, that they do not want the shilling to appreciate further, probably to 120, 110. Who knows where it wants to be, where it should be, but just to let it where it is. So that is where the managing of the shilling happens.
And I remember as soon as President William Ruto came to the office, one of the issues he highlighted was that there was monkey business going on, and that he was freeing the dollar and the shilling to be subjected to the forces of demand and supply. So how did that change? Why did it change? If you're accusing the previous regime of the same treatment of the dollar, but now it's happening, what's going on?
Yeah, so the thing that has been different this time around is now we have an active foreign exchange interbank market. Previously, it wasn't there. So even within the context of foreign exchange interbank market, we are not seeing, or rather, yes, there's the market that is there, but ideally there should be the demand and supply forces coming into play within that foreign exchange interbank market. But evidently, looking at this stability, because I mean, within the market, there's some signaling effect. If you go to the market, say even the mama mboga, if you see the prices of tomatoes going higher, lower, I mean, it's a signaling effect. But what we are seeing here within the context of the foreign exchange interbank market, we are not seeing that playing out. So what is at play? So that speaks to managing of this particular currency, the pragmatism that the senior officials spoke. Is it legal? It's not that it's not legal. We've seen even previously, this is way before the concept of floating currency came. People will fix their currency. So fixed currency was the norm before now the floating currency came in. The legal aspect to it is, is it even workable? Or what is the end objectives to it? There are so many angles you can look at it, but I think in the context of looking at the currencies, that's where the IMF comes into play, because IMF comes in whenever there's a balance of payment crisis in any given country. So they're the ones who sort of classify countries depending on their different currency regimes. So there's normally an annual report that comes from the IMF. And also in the context of this event that happened last week, IMF came in the context of the remarks by the KRA chair. He also alluded to the context of IMF. But it seems to me that even hearing some of these officials, there's a discussions within IMF mission came to town sometime last month, if not the previous month, just to discuss possibilities of getting into an IMF program. But it seems to me right now that there's a turnaround from some of these officials that they may not want to, they're not keen on pursuing an IMF program. So to me, it's like, all along, or what all this points out that, okay, let's just have some stability, probably not get into the IMF program. The IMF may not be on our case because we are managing the shilling. So it's like we want to sort of pivot away from the IMF program, because being in an IMF program, they're this kind of big brother surveillance, and one of the things that they keep looking at is currency. So it points out that probably there's a possibility that we're not keen on pursuing an IMF program. It will be good because we've seen what happened in the course of last year, the revenue aggressiveness in revenue mobilization, which now led to protest. But I think right now that is kind of the objective, if you ask me, the bigger picture of it.
All right. I'll hear from you, Steve. I know you have a lot of things to say about that, as well as Ikua, on the Kenya shilling versus the dollar, but also the implication. If we are growing the forex reserves to 5.3 months, I think this is the highest in a very long time. Should you be feeling the impact, or what should you be feeling? We're back in a moment. Stay tuned for that conversation.